Hello, this is Érika from Small Robot Studio. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to understand any type of fur and hair and how to paint them. We all know that there are all sorts of varieties of hair and fur. To paint them, we are going to pay attention to its color, its thickness, its density, referring to the amount of hair, and the shape it follows, from straight to super curly. Think of these four elements as levels that we can switch around. For example, this guy has very dark hair, which is fairly thick. He's got a lot of hair, so he is on the high density side, and its type will be in the middle, as it is slightly wavy but not really curvy. This cat is a mid-dark tone, very thin, again high density because it's a lot, and it's a little too short to really tell its type, but I will categorize it as straight. She of course has a lighter color, medium thickness, a mid-high quantity of hair, and of course she's on the curliest extreme. This other lady is between two colors, but I'm indicating the lightest. Her hair is on the thinner side. In contrast to the previous examples, there is not a lot of density. This guy flaunts more than one color as well, but I'm indicating the darkest. This fur is very thick. Density goes up again and the type is straight. I could go on and on with different examples, but you get the point. Identifying these characteristics is imperative to analyze accurately the shape hair creates and the behavior of light on it. But before diving in, I want to thank our Patreon supporters who allow us to bring you more content every week. They of course get access to bonus content, like complete unedited illustration time-lapses, a PDF version of the lessons with homework exercises, and for this tutorial, the brushes I created for painting hair. Sign up at patreon.com/smallrobotstudio. Let's talk about shapes, which divides in two more branches, volume and silhouette. Hair sits on top of something that establishes its base shape. A human head is like a sphere. We need to establish the base volume before adding any more. Depending on the characteristics of hair, it's the amount of extra volume that hair is gonna add to that original shape. Flat and thin hair describes that original volume without adding a lot. On the other hand, thick and curly hair adds volume. Density will be relevant as well. A lot of hair, even thin and straight, can add a fair amount of volume. Now that we have established the volume, we can talk about the border of that silhouette. Hair is not a block of clay with perfectly defined borders. We need to pay attention on how diffused or defined the borders are. How many loose strands do I see? A good silhouette already tells me if something is hairy and the type of hair it is made of. Once we have a successful silhouette, we are going to break it down into overlapping layers. Don't forget that the layers on top will project shadows to the ones below them. We don't really see hair as individual strands, but as groups that kind of look like ribbons. Gravity is going to affect them. Curly hair usually resists gravity, keeping its shape unlike straight hair. Let's talk about the behavior of light. I'm gonna turn things black and white to remove a layer of difficulty and focus on how light works. When a light hits a surface, it bounces, losing a bit of intensity. A uniform surface will create defined shapes of light and shadow. On a softer surface, these shapes are less obviously defined. But hair is not one, but several surfaces. A light ray breaks as it bounces on those different surfaces. That bounce might hit more hair and bounce again, and so on. Moreover, hair is translucent, to different degrees depending on its color. These two characteristics can diffuse light into a point where it creates a glowing effect. Knowing this, we can explain why the highlights in these two examples of hair are so different. Straight hair means a more uniform surface. Darker hair also absorbs less light, which is gonna make the shapes in the highlight more defined and stronger. The glow effect is gonna be very subtle. Afros don't have a uniform surface, so there's a ton of diffusion. We are not gonna find a defined shape of light and shadow like in straight hair. The extra diffusion means the glow effect intensifies. The reason why highlights are stronger when head is wet, it's because the liquid decreases diffusion by flattening the hair into a more regular surface and adding its own highlights. Again, knowing this is gonna be essential information when we are choosing the values to paint. I mean the colors in a grayscale. I am going to choose only 3 values to start. A mid-tone, which is an average of the hair color, along with an average light and shadow. I could be inclined to believe that lighter color hair will have brighter highlights. But remember, dark hair has strong highlights because it's absorbing less light. Pay attention on how you choose your grays and note how separated or close they can be in the grayscale. Dark hair has its shadow and midtone very close together on the darker side of a grayscale, but its highlight is far into the lighter area. Light hair is overall on the lighter side of the grayscale, with little separation between its grays. Its compact value range is a result of light diffusion. This guy's fur favors the mid-grays. Did you notice how much darker the light tone is? Now that we know how to deconstruct the characteristics of hair and fur, I want to show you a few steps to paint it. You can use any brush that gives you the strokes you're looking for. I created several brushes aimed at painting realistic hair for this demo. They are available for you to download in our Patreon or my Gumroad. Of course, the links are in the description below. Step 1. Planning. Sketch defining the layering of the main strands and the flow they follow. The higher the density, the more layers you should plan. If hair is too short, spend more time planning the direction where hair points at. Plan a basic color palette based on what you know about the behavior of light. Plan if the highlights are gonna be really bright or closer to the midtone. Step 2. Paint your silhouette. I start with the base volume and then add extra volume. The extra volume and the softness in your silhouette will communicate the type, thickness, and density of hair. Use only one color. By all means, include little strands of hair breaking that silhouette and adding negative space. As you can see, I'm switching between brushes that give me soft and defined hair strands. Step 3. General shading. I'm gonna go darker overall and think of the shading of the whole volume. If you're wondering why we're starting darker, it's because we are painting what's underneath. It's like the ground of a forest on a sunny day. The treetops will be illuminated, but not the ground because the trees are blocking most of the light. Just like in the forest, the base where hair grows is obscured. Step 4. Start layering. I am painting the main strands of hair, introducing midtones. The ribbons we talked about before. To avoid painting detail, I am squinting, which is gonna help me not to go very small. Afro styles have layers, but we don't really see the ribbons. I am using a brush that lets me block big shapes and a round soft brush to create nice transition. Overall, avoid going too small. To make it look layered, start from the bottom. Use a lighter color and start from the end of a strand, moving towards its origin. I'm also painting some projected shadows. These first steps are the ones that take most time, and it's still big shapes, not detail. Step 5. Break down the ribbons. It's time to break these big shapes into smaller ones and introduce some texture. I am now using brushes with texture that will help me doing so. If your objective is realistic hair, you will need to spend more time breaking down those strands. It's very easy to over-render. You can notice I'm having trouble in the last sphere. Once I realized I was doing that, I went back, blending an area, turning it back to a big shape. The last step is adding details. I'm adjusting the colors, adding some individual hair, and adding stronger highlights and shadows where needed. The key for painting fur or hair successfully is understanding what you are painting and working in order. On this painting, the most difficult part was choosing the right colors. The values are very similar between them, there's almost no contrast. I jumped ahead and started painting strands before figuring out a simple color palette. So I had to take a step back and make sure that my grayscale worked before adding any more strands. When in doubt, go back and redo a step. And just so you know, I made this painting with the default brushes that come in the Infinite Painter app. Fancy brushes are not gonna make the job for you, but they certainly save time. That's it for this tutorial. If you find it useful, make sure that you leave a like so other people can find it. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, as we are bringing out CG and illustration tutorials every week. Become a patron and access tutorial assets, bonus content, a private Discord, and more by clicking in the link below.